Welcome, boys and girls, the Four Outdoorsmen podcast on Alive and Social Network, aliveandsocial.com. However you acquired us, there are several ways to do it on our website as well. We're working on the website.
We're working on the website.
We're working on a show. We're working on the website. We're working on shotguns. We're working on... Are we still working on tackle anymore? I don't know, but I've got to get out to the range and start shooting some trap. We are closing in on waterfowl and upland season.
Yeah, and fall turkey season's
and
right
fall
around the
turkey
corner
season.
too.
I didn't get a turkey. When is now? That's not something you can buy. They have like 12 seasons or something ridiculous like that. It's like 5 or 8.
Yeah, they have 8 seasons in the spring, but
And
in
they do
the
a draw.
fall they don't have a lottery, I believe.
So over the counter.
Over the counter, and
Well-
you can shoot a hen and a tom.
Well, I'm not. I don't want to go with you. I want to go
I
with
can't
Vaughn.
tell the difference. So just
Yeah.
I want to go with Vaughn, Papa Boomer, the turkey slayer. If you're just catching our podcast, Vaughn has come into a lot of our broadcasts when we did this as a radio show, and we don't have the audio around turkey season. In fact, just before the turkey opener, we'll figure out how to get the audio on our podcast
That would
of
be
a
awesome.
voicemail that he left you after the spring hunt, and he just shot just a big old
A 20,
hot air balloon.
23 to 25 pound tom.
Yeah.
You're not going to believe this.
Yeah, it's a great
It's
voicemail.
big. It's big.
Great voicemail. Breathing heavy. Told you he loved
And
you
he was
several
dressed
times.
up for
I
it too,
love you.
right?
Why do our dads, who aren't the biggest "I love you" generation, why do they always say that when they? I think my dad said that when he got his trophy mule deer. I love you, son. What? Why you love me when you shoot a trophy?
the only time L Man told me he loved me is after he punched me.
Well, he felt he had to. That's called balancing the scale.
He did
All
that.
right,
It's a 50-50.
you know that hurt me as much as it hurt you.
I punched you for your own good.
Yeah.
You know, the worst thing about that is Dad had told me, I was all, scent blockered up. I had all my camouflage on. I sat in the blind for a day. We had a really good walleye bite out there in Traverse, and we only got to turkey hunt a couple days this spring, and we didn't have much luck. Saw a couple hens. Dad goes out there, sees a field with Todd, our buddy at Wing and Fin, goes out there in jeans and a gray sweatshirt.
It's like me. It's a good man.
Hobbles along. The big tom of his life comes around, and he blasts it right in the head, and you'll hear the story on a future podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of turkeys, Thane, I've been out seeing the clam guys. I'm doing my other radio gig out at the State Fair. And Thane, the turkey whisperer, what's Thane's last name?
Jensen.
Thane that's
Jensen.
right. He did an into-the-field broadcast and maybe a couple of shows with us.
Yes.
And that guy can call a turkey.
Won 3rd place at the game fair 2 years ago in the competition.
Yeah. Well, he's out working for Clam, and they're right across the street from the old radio station, the old log cabin over there. And so him and I have been doing a little jaw jacking. He might give me he's going to be back there on Labor Day. And I told him I need a turkey call lesson from him.
He would be the man to give a call
Yeah.
lesson from. He is absolutely amazing. He can do every call the man. Thane's hunted all over the Midwest. And I tell you, if anyone can talk turkey, Thane is good with the tongue.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, since this is only the second Four Outdoorsmen show that we've had here so far, I think everyone knows Zep. No one has to introduce Zep, but you are Boomer, right?
Yeah, Boomer here.
Boomer, I'm Steve.
Stru.
Straczynski, Strewman, Wildcard, and Mark Lukey, our producer. The 4th Outdoorsman is right over there. Here we go.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Say
And
hi,
guys,
Mark.
Hi.
he gets paid by the word, by the way. Did
He
we
does.
decide that?
Mark is going to be doing the interview when we have a mime on the show. So
When we go video, he's going to
they'll
show
just
up
do
big.
fine. Yeah.
Jason Wicklund, the PR guy for Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever here in Minnesota, is going to be our guest on the podcast a little bit later on. So, like I talked about at the last podcast, we're making that transition. Fishing is awesome. It rocks no more than in Minnesota, but I'm ready to do some hunting.
It's
I'm
time
gonna be
for the
I'm gonna
fall,
be your,
boys.
I'm gonna be your next guest next Wednesday because I'm going bass fishing with Mike Rates, right? Is that
Oh,
right?
yeah, Mike
awesome.
Rates Outdoors.
Yeah, we're going to smallmouth bass fishing on the Mississippi River, someplace up by St. Cloud. I'm excited about that. So I might be your number 1 guest next week,
All right, we'll put you in the guest chair.
unless I get skunked.
Now, Stu, it
What are
is
the
youth
odds?
waterfall season on September 12th. So if you can figure out a way to look a little younger, dye your hair, you might be able to get out there.
On the
huh?
right side.
You're on the right side.
I
Right
can't,
side,
I
huh?
can't even get on some of the rides yet at the State Fair. That's how small
You can't
I
wear
am.
that
Yeah.
Jimmy's ball cap. though.
That's all right. Speaking of the State Fair, you've been out there. How's the State Fair been to you this week?
It's been good. I mean, it's Thursday and Friday, that opening weekend, and I wasn't out there for the weekend, but I consider Thursday and Friday part of that opening weekend. Gonzo.
That's why I was
they
there.
broke
Just
records, couldn't find parking. I ended up driving around for 45 minutes driving home and catching a cab back to the State Fair. I just went to heck with it. And but it was very busy. A lot of very cool people stopped by. I don't know what we can talk about sponsorship-wise or not. The Rax girls were out there.
Fantastic.
We did an Into the Field broadcast from Rax Bar and Grill down on Highway 13 in Burnsville.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yes.
as a result, the Rax girls all came over to say hi. They were looking for Stru. They found me.
Yeah,
And I've got the only air-conditioned booth and like a 3-block air out there on Machinery Hill. So we got them all in for a photo opportunity. You haven't seen that picture yet, have you?
No,
Bubba?
I have not, but I'm about to creep it right
Yeah.
now.
I'm on it.
We'll
He's
get
on
that
it.
sucker out there. Of course, we're right across the street from Clam, just down the street from Cabela's, who, I really got to tip the cap to their display out there. I don't know how we're doing here with sponsorships on the podcast, so I'm just going to call it like it is because they have on Cooper Street a shooting gallery that is just amazing.
I saw it. It's right. It's not too far from your
So
booth.
impressive,
Yeah.
and the steel lumberjack thing right next to that. They've got such a big display; they take up about a half a block.
Giggles is right down the block.
Oh, I've had walleye every day today. Walleye mac and cheese. Yesterday, the walleye cakes, walleye fingers. The day before that. So I'm trying to get the most out of the fair. I think I might have caught the sniffles out there from you shake hands and kissing babies. Vote Zepp.
Yeah, you were talking about parking. I went to the State Fair. My wife and I worked out there
Yeah.
for one day, volunteered for the Lions Club, the Wildwood Lions. Hats off to you guys. And it took me an hour to get there from White Bear Lake to the State Fairgrounds. And my wife had to walk the last 2 blocks because I was not going to get to our station in time. So I had to go find a place to park. We finally got there in time. We got there. We got things started. But in the St. Paul Morning Paper today, in the St. Paul Pioneer Press, funnier than hell, some guy going to the State Fair for his first time, they figured out by the time they left the St. Paul Pioneer Press, by the time they got to the State Fair, he Googled it. They could have walked quicker, he said. From the St. Paul Pioneer Press, they could have walked quicker. But it was a good time. But, yeah, part of Minnesota.
You know what, though? At the State Fair, I was a little disappointed, Stu, because one thing I always love to do is go to the Minnesota DNR building and look at all the fish and then look at all the ducks. It's waterfall season. It's right around the corner. I talked about youth season opening up here on September 12th.
Yeah.
There were no ducks, okay? They had it grown in. There was a bunch of foliage. There was a bunch of brush, and they had decoys out there. And I kept walking around, and I was with my old man. We went to the Alan Jackson concert on Sunday night.
Oh, fun. Yeah.
It was a blast. But I look around, and then there's a sign that says, due to the avian flu, there will be no live ducks this year at the Minnesota State Fair.
No way.
I knew that. Everybody knew that.
Well, obviously, I missed the
I didn't know
newsletter
that.
on that one.
They've got the underwater cam over on the DNR fish pond this year. That was kind
was
of
kinda
Huge
interesting.
muskies in there.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
went there
muskie.
as a boy. That
By
was
the
awesome.
way, fellas, it is muskie season now.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
now's the time to
Yes.
start making that transition. Of course, go out for the smallies. But I was just talking to a guy out on Independence. Himself caught 3 muskies one night. That was
On-
before it
on
even got
Independence?
dark. Out on Independence.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, though, this is the time of year, fall, when the emerald shiners start running up the creeks and rivers, and those walleyes are going to start running up there, and it's going to be a really hot walleye bite, guys. You got to give it a couple more weeks. The water surface temp has got to cool down a little bit, but those walleyes are going to start to go a little bit shallower, and the bite is going to get really good.
That transition from summer to fall is really an exciting time, especially here in the Midwest. And, yeah, I see guys already starting to do their archery, getting the bows out and start slinging them downrange. I've got to get out and start shooting some trap out on a couple of different courses out there. They've got that great waterfowl course. It's a new course. I haven't been down to it, but I hear it's super challenging down at the Horse and Hunt Club, the rebuilt Horse and Hunt Club.
yeah, I've heard about that.
They rebuilt that entire old rickety waterfowl tower down there. And then, of course, over at the South St. Paul Gun Club, they've got if you love upland birds, or even if you're getting out for grouse or quail or something like that, those smaller brush birds, that's a great course for that as well.
You know, and we got to get ready for early teal season in Minnesota, don't we?
No, we don't. Not unless we're going to cross the border.
Geez, to Wisconsin.
Yeah.
I just saw that picture of Zepp with the girls from the rack.
It's not. Oh, yeah.
You looked very professional. They were obviously looking for Stru, but they seemed very comfortable with Zepp.
I'll tell you, I like to go over to the rack and watch football games on the weekend as well. I mean, well, that's another great thing about fall. We got the big NFL season starting here. That was my whole lead into your.
I'm ready.
It was just
We're live, Stru. Why don't you just cue it in?
That was from broadcasting school.
But I'll tell you what I
101.
was thinking. How can you you go from the rack to football.
Yeah,
You know,
I was
thinking
thinking
about.
Yeah.
I was
Speaking
thinking
of
about
football,
Speaking of
Stu.
football, hey, only a few more preseason games to go before the regular season kicks off, and you can start the season by winning $2 million in 1 week at DraftKings.com, America's favorite 1 week fantasy football site. It's the biggest fantasy football contest ever. $10 million.
Whoa!
Wow, a lot of money in prizes and grabs. Up to $2 million for first place and $1 million for second. 1 week fantasy means no season-long commitments. It's fantasy football on demand. You play when you want, where you want, you play the players you want. Just pick your players, pile up points, pick up the cash. That's it. You've never experienced football like this. Every game feels like playoffs, even in week 1. And every broken tackle or a spectacular catch could make you closer to a $2 million guy. That's a lot of money, man. Isn't fantasy as usual? It's DraftKings. Welcome to the big time. Hurry to DraftKings.com now and use promo code SPREAKER, SPREAKER, to play free for a shot at $2 million in the Week 1 Millionaire Maker. Enter Spreaker for a free entry now at DraftKings.com. That's DraftKings.com. That's a lot of money.
Wow, $2 million. I could go hunting with Billy Moles. I'd take you guys with me if I won $2 million. Yeah,
Wow,
yeah, we could get that done. That's pretty cool. Well, Stu, tell us about your week, buddy. You were out at the fair for one day. Your lovely wife Diana was out there with you.
I had a great time doing that. I'll tell you what, but she's still upset with me, pissed off at me a little bit. I think.
Yeah,
I think we went to Washington D.C.
I would think that you would know if that woman's.
Well,
pissed
she
off
just
at
gives
you.
me the look, you know. Honestly,
Yeah,
God, in
the
30
look?
in 33 years, we
Show
never
us what the
ever.
look is.
Oh,
Oh,
no, I'll
don't-
show you later on. But in 33 years, we've never have really, honest to God, you can't believe this, raised our voice. She just gives me the look. We've never raised our
Okay.
voices at each other. But Washington D.C., I still think it's kind of bothers her. The last day we're there, we had a great time. We're going to have one special dinner and get all dressed up and go out. And I'm all set waiting for her. She comes out of wherever she was in the hotel room and looking sharp. And she got like culottes on. You know what culottes on? They're like a dress with a
Short.
yeah.
kind of thing,
Because she's got great legs.
Yeah.
And she says, "How do I look?" And I says, "Do you look? I love the outfit, but you got the nylons have runs in them." And she gave me the look. She was pissed off.
I mean,
was just being honest.
Yeah,
Come
I
on,
know.
Drew.
Mark married, and he's looking at him, shaking head no.
What are nylons?
Well, I'll tell you what. That's the point she was trying to make because she wasn't wearing any nylons.
Oh,
Yeah.
get
So
outta
she-
here.
No, she got pissed off at me. That must.
You
I'm just
didn't
kidding.
see how
I
bad
just did. No, that just. No, we had a great time. That was just
fell for it.
I fished. I caught some fish off the dock. You saw that,
I
right?
saw that picture. There are fish in Chautauqua.
Couple of sunfish off the dock,
Mm-hmm.
and the lake that Sophie said, "Dad, there's something wrong with this lake."
Well, there are a bunch of
But,
dead
we-
floating fish. when she
No,
was
no,
there.
no, no. We were there with that day. We were on Prairie Lake and spent a couple of days there. Played in a softball tournament this weekend in Rochester. I go down to Rochester, Minnesota Saturday, play a couple of games, drive all the way back home, get up, and we won one, lost two. It's a double elimination tournament. Dinah's at the cabin. I get up at 5 o'clock on Sunday morning, all the way down to Rochester, play one game, get our asses kicked, and I'm done. I drove 90 miles, play one softball game.
Welcome to the big leagues. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's softball
Now-
tournaments. Of course, back when we were kids and playing softball, and when I say kids, I mean our 20s and 30s, you'd drive 90 miles, lose that first game, and then just get tanked for the rest of the
No,
weekend.
here's I think
Sleep
I
in the
won.
car.
We actually won because if we would have won the game at 8 o'clock, we play again like at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I figured this is okay. We'll lose this one. I headed to Chautauqua and had a great time. I did
Good.
some things, and that was my week. But just plug it along. How about yourself? Besides the state fair,
Really, that's been it. It's been the state fair. That's that's getting in and getting out of there, and yeah, like I said, who catches a cold in August? I'm past the contagious stage.
That's what they all say.
I know, right? I've said that so many times in my life. For so many different reasons, but I think I caught it in the milk barn. Kicked out of the milk barn again this year for being inappropriate.
I thought you were doing some charity work.
Some charity work, cannonballed into the DNR pond. I really do. I'm one of those guys that's, the state fair, that sounds like a hassle. But I really do enjoy getting out there. I think it's the old farm kid in me, because I will go down to the livestock barns and walk around and see the exhibits. And nearly everything you don't want to do is free. Everything else costs money. But
boy, the lines though. I was going to try some of the old fattening things, and I was not going to wait for. Even at
Yeah.
Giggles, the line was 30 people. I'm not waiting.
Yeah,
I'm
today was a mellow day out there,
won't do
Military Appreciation Day, so I
Yeah.
went out there a little bit earlier, and they had a lot of military displays and events out there, so that was kind of cool. I hung around some of those, and having done some, a few veterans things, things and attended a couple of things.
And I did see
over
you
the
on
years.
TV carrying that sign that said "DJ's Lives Matter."
The DJ's lives
Yeah, well,
matter.
that was you, wasn't it? I think on Saturday.
No, but I
Wasn't it?
did get into a little. I did draw a little fire for my whole Black Lives Matter. I did a whole big thing about black lights.
Oh, did you really?
Kids aren't using black lights anymore.
That's
Black
right.
Lives Matter.
Oh,
and
that's right.
I drew a little fire for that, but dang it, they do.
Did
matter
you know
in some
my
way.
first job was at the Minnesota State Fair?
No.
Cleaning the poultry crap.
Yeah.
So
Was
they
it
do
really?
the changeover there in the livestock, and I'd have to go over there at like 1 in the morning.
That's
and
the
change.
worst crap too.
It was the worst. I'd
Of all the
move those
livestock
chickens.
crap,
Oh,
yeah, the
man,
poultry
it
crap and the
smells,
hog crap.
stinks.
Yeah.
Oh, moving the cages, getting it all done, absolutely awful.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
Dad and I went to the Alan Jackson concert, and my dad, for our audience
Okay.
out there, is 72 years old.
Yeah.
Loves country music, and
I
we
know
sat
why
there.
he loves country music too, because I've been out there for some of these country acts. I forget the gal that played the other night. Holy
Yeah.
hot ladies.
Yes.
Cowgirl boots and
Oh,
the
yeah.
cutoffs.
Cutoffs and everything is.
Dad's legs were twitching.
Yeah.
And his eyes were moving. He was a
Yeah.
happy man at the Alan
Yeah.
Jackson. I tell you what, Alan Jackson's been playing country music for 25 years. Packed house there at the grandstand. We were in the first aisle there, section 15, seats 1 and 2. And I tell you what, Alan Jackson still has it. When he played "She's Gone Country," yeah, the boot kickers were out. Absolutely loved the scenery. And he actually stood up for that song. I held him up. I don't think he was watching Alan Jackson during that. I think he was watching the dancing in front of us.
Oh,
but
yeah.
he had a blast. It was good.
Yeah, it is. There is also that at the fair as well. The ladies, it's the end of the summer.
And it's
They're-
hot.
They're a little more fit, right at the end of the summer. Everybody's got that good color to their skin. You get that warm blast, and we've certainly had it this week. And it's just, I've got a good spot. I'm sitting right there on Cooper in the big old log cabin, so I've got a nice spot out there.
Great people watching.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
You know
Boomer.
what? Let's talk about great people. And we want to welcome to the Four Outdoorsmen our new sponsor.
Yeah.
It's our old friends at Lakes Trading Company. Thank you to Ben and Joe at Lakes Trading Company for following us on our new podcast adventure here at the Four Outdoorsmen. Lakes Trading Company is a fantastic gun range and gun shop located in Forest Lake. They have everything you need for hunting season, self-defense, or even the 3-gun competition shooting, which we talked about on the show.
Right.
They can also set you up with a newly legal suppressor. Lakes Trading Company offers classes for all ages and skill levels, including permit to carry classes held at least twice a month. If you're getting to where guns need to be, you need to visit the folks at Lakes Trading Company or go to lakestradingcompany.com and say hi to from your friends at the Four Outdoorsmen.
Hell of a spot.
Yeah, if you're like me and you don't ever clean your guns, you don't take care of them, you let them sit outside overnight. It's a good thing before we get into the waterfowl season, or whether you're using your shotgun for hunting, whatever gun you're going to use for hunting this fall, and have somebody run through it, give it a good cleaning, and make the proper adjustments. Our guest for this particular podcast, what about last week? Babe Winkleman, Dave Warwick, was that a lot of fun? This week, Jared Wicklund, PR specialist for Pheasants and Quail Forever, right out of St. Paul, Minnesota. And Pheasants Forever has really
Changed the game, I think, for pheasant hunting habitat.
They really have. I don't think a lot of hunters probably remember how bleak it was in the 80s in pheasant country, where I grew up, South Dakota. Oh, my gosh. You were lucky if you would go out for the weekend and get a bird or see 3 birds.
All right, then how come you guys are up 40% this year then?
40
100% in the last 2-3 years.
42%. Well, a lot of that has been conservation and putting in and really making the habitat work. In Minnesota, it's a little bit more. Do we have them on?
7, 3.
Oh, I didn't hear the little little beeping.
It is
that was
amazing
dialing.
that in the last 3 or 4 years, you guys are up over 100%, and we're struggling in Minnesota. And it's all habitat,
a lot of
right?
it has to do with the habitat, the farmers out there like Zepp's dad that put in the shelter belts and all that kind of information. I mean, pheasant hunting in South Dakota is the mecca, and those guys treat it like a business as well. I mean, I don't know
It is a business.
how much it's worth to the economy out there, but I remember I've hunted out in that part of the country, and it's got to be in the hundreds and hundreds of millions what pheasant hunting is worth to South Dakota.
And I will say also in Minnesota, you've got a lot more wildlife competition on the ground from the pheasant's point of view.
Right.
Minnesota has such a diversity of grouse and
Turkeys
pheasant, and
now.
turkeys now are becoming dominant in Minnesota. And while we still do very well with turkeys in some areas out in South Dakota, I think turkeys are one of those birds that they probably don't play well with other birds.
Yeah.
They don't cohabitate very well together. And I don't know. Maybe we can talk to Jared about that. Do we have Jared on?
No, so you think turkeys then compete with
Well,
pheasants as far as habitat and
everything
eating habits?
Everything competes for habitat, and in Minnesota, you just have a lot more of it. First of all, we have a lot more wetlands. There's a lot
Right.
more waterfowl. That, and I think a species has to be in place for a really long time. I mean, South Dakota has been pheasant country for over a century. Pheasants have been made to work there. And Minnesota was a little bit late to the game as far as stocking and maintaining.
Right.
And South Dakota used a lot more set-aside acres in the 90s than Minnesota did. I think there are probably varying reasons, but in South Dakota, it is a big industry, so it cannot fail.
Heck, South Dakota is a place where you have $1 million bird competition. I mean,
Yeah,
where
up in
else
Aberdeen.
can you go and win $1 million to go pheasant hunting but else in South Dakota?
Explain that.
Well, in Aberdeen, and I can't remember the county. What's the county of
Brown
it?
County.
Brown County. You can win $1 million. You go out there and you apply for it or whatnot. And if you shoot one of these 100 banded pheasants, then you get that band and you bring it into one of their check-in points, and then they log you in. They take a picture. You could win a prize there. I'm not sure what it is, Drew. And then at the end of the season, they then draw a number 1 through 100, and they draw someone who has one of those bands.
Yeah.
And if the number they draw from the raffle matches the band that the hunter got, that person is going to walk away with $1 million.
Wow.
Big numbers. Yeah, in Beetle County, south of Brown County, a couple of counties in that, corridor of pheasant country out there in South Dakota. They kind of battle with Brown County. In fact, Brown County is sort of trying to take the crown away from Beetle, which is, we consider ourselves the pheasant capital of South Dakota. Another really important thing, Stu, when you talk about pheasant populations, is South Dakota is a lot drier
Yeah.
than Minnesota. And a dry spring, a dry hatch, what you would consider a drought here and bad for the duck hatch, is essential in South Dakota. In fact, we've had a couple of wet springs 2 or 3 years back that really hurt the pheasant hatch. So that has a lot to do with it as well. Hey, guys, I know we're trying to get a hold of Jared Wickland. While we're doing that, I just want to mention this is kind of cool for us. We're on the Alive and Social Network.
Yep.
This is new. Have you guys been to the website?
Yes,
I've
I
been
have.
to the website. There's all these really cool podcasts I've started to download. One of them I just started listening to, Apples to Apples. This one's a sports show. The thing I like about the dynamic I like here, dad and son.
That's cool.
Boomer, you're so close with your dad. I'm very close with my dad. Well, we all are. Well, and Mark, I know you're very close with your father as well. But this is so you know how that dynamic works, and now you get sports in there. Can you imagine doing a show with your dad? I feel like every time I talked to Dad just yesterday about pheasant hunting, about the opener coming up here in South Dakota in about a month and 3 weeks, and I felt like we were already doing a show. Scott and Drew Applebaum. Then you get apples to apples. So find out if Father really knows best. Visit aliveandsocial.com and check out Apples to Apples. That's a dad and son duking it out over sports.
Speaking of father and son, and you get out there in the field, if you're pheasant hunting or duck hunting, or if you're on the boat, the Alumacraft or whatnot, and you're doing some fishing. My dad is 72 and I'm 37, but I swear when I'm still out in the field or on the boat with Dad, he still talks to me like I'm 10 years old. Do you still get that,
That's
guys?
my biggest thing with Dad. The last hunting trip we were on, Dad's like, pack up your stuff. I'm like, oh, yeah, Dad, I'm just watching the weather here. Once I hit the weather, I'll get my stuff. I said, pack up your stuff. Now I'm like, Dad, I'm at the time 48 or whatever. Dad, I'm 48. I'll pack up my stuff when I'm done watching the weather. And we ended up getting into a big fight about it and didn't talk for the 80-mile drive home.
Oh,
I'm like, are you kidding me? Really?
I had it with my dad fishing for crappies out on Waconia, and he's like, all right, we're going to get to the spot. And I'm like, Dad, I have it waypointed on the GPS here on the Alumacraft. And he's like, oh, no. This is the spot I used to take it.
Yeah.
Even though I have it waypointed right up, and I get right to the spot, and he's like, no, move to the left. And sure as crap, Dad was right. I make the cast. There's not a bite. Dad casts about 30 yards away from the boat. You know what I mean? Doesn't care that me and Soph are over here doing our thing. And wham, gets the bite. And he just looks at it and says, I told you, now someone's going to take our spot. Now move the damn boat over there, Boomer, and let's get on the bite,
Deer hunting. All right, so Dad, I've learned, whatever Dad says goes. But, he still talks to me like it's my first hunt and I'm 12 years old. And, I'm closing in on 50 years old. And I know when he was in his 30s and 40s, he was this amazing deer hunter. I'm old enough now. I've got the tricks. but he's still right at 70 years of age. I'm like, really? When do I get to be right?
Yeah, every time when we get out there deer hunting up in Bacchus, Minnesota, and for my family, for our listeners out there, when I went to college down at Missouri Southern, he was like, you know what? I know you're going to be playing ball down there, Boomer. You can miss Christmas, but I swear to God on your mother, if you miss deer opener here in the state of Minnesota, you will not be part of the family.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, well, that's great, Dad. But we get out there, guys, and I literally, my dad's just like, okay, don't forget about your safety. Do you have your peak canteen? Yes, I do, Dad. You got some snacks out there. And don't forget, because I made this mistake when I was like 15, the first time I shot this big buck. He's like, let it sit for 30 minutes before you go in the field. He has told me that now for 20 plus years, because when I was 15 years old, guy, I was sitting in this foxhole, and this big 8-point walked up, and I had my 257 Roberts, and the deer was about 10 yards close to me. It couldn't work in the scope, and I didn't know that. All I saw was brown, so I point and I shoot, and I
Brown is down.
Brown, it's down. The deer kind of rolls over, and of course I don't shoot again. I'm all excited, and the deer goes tromping into the woods right next to where my dad's stand was, and I'm all pumped. I'm like, Dad, I got him. We tracked that deer over 2 miles and never got him. So hence the story. Dad still reminds me. He'll remind me this year when I'm hunting at 37. Make sure you wait 30 minutes before you shoot that deer. Have a cup of coffee and let him lay down and die. So that's the great thing about being father and son. I mean, in fact, Zepp, when we had Mark and his dad out there on Minnetonka, and we were just slaying the bass, you could just see old Papa Lukey over there telling Mark what to do and what he was doing wrong. It was just amazing. Yeah. He caught the first fish, didn't he?
Yeah, always. They always do.
They always do, don't they?
Old man power.
They just are always right. That drives me crazy.
But I will say for the record that Papa Zepp is always right at Great Plains hunting out in Huron, South Dakota. So if you do want to let us out there and hunt with your son for a free trip, we'd make sure to give you shameless plugs.
I'll listen to you.
We'll listen to you. If Zepp doesn't, we'll listen to you, Papa Zepp.
That's what we have working against us. His dad has had that business for over 25 years, and he has a clientele that's locked in. He's like, we're good.
Yeah.
Don't you want some more? No, we're fine right where we're at. Well, you lost a couple of hunters this year. We're slowing down a little bit. That's okay. It's a lot of ways. He's a retired hunter. They've made their money. Everything's paid for. They've got a couple more. Mom's like, it'll be nice to have a weekend or two off during the season. I'm like, and we're opposite-minded. We're in go mode. We're in those working years.
We're going.
I'm like, you got to sell it out every weekend. No, it's okay. We'll take a weekend off. Well, let us come out and hunt. You guys just hang out, and Dad will drive you around. We'll let you block. You don't have to walk the dogs. Just block.
My dad would tell me how I'm blocking wrong, or I'm on the wrong end of the shelter belt, or the wind's playing wrong.
That's the worst. I go out and I help guide hunters. I help guide hunters that he's charging a premium to hunt on this beautiful land out there, and he's constantly in front of them. Brian, no, how many times have I told him? Like,
speaking, here's my ADHD.
But he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, my ADHD on air. Remember how we had Dave Orrick on? We were talking about the brown dew rotters and how mystical it is up there, and we've had some previous guests come on about the coal mine or some type of mine that's 30 miles away. They actually had a cool exhibit at the Dairy Building at the Minnesota State Fair where you could take your picture, and it was, I don't know if it was to protest or whatever it was, but it was to save the boundary waters.
Yeah.
So they had their own little booth there at the Dairy Building before I got my shake. Did I take a picture with them? No, because my dad got impatient and he thought we were going to miss the Alan Jackson concert. We had to be there an hour early. Yeah. And I was thinking it was maybe because Dad really wanted to get a good seat. No, it's because my dad had wondering eyes.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yes. He wants to get in there to watch everybody else come into that show.
Yes, he did. Yeah. And he had a smirk on every time someone would say, excuse me, and walk by.
That's where you got to let that leg sit out in the aisle so they have to slow down.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, here.
He's got it at 72, and he knows how to play the old man card on him, too, Zepp. He'd be like, oh, you look so cute tonight. And they're like, oh, he's such a little cutie.
I'm right between that age
where he'd wink at me afterwards, right? He played the card.
I'm too old to actually seriously approach these women, but I'm not old enough to be that old cute guy that they come over and are friendly to. I'm just sort of in that lecherous age. Yeah. Like, you're an old man.
Yeah. I tell you what, though, Zepp, you still have it, because when we were at the Alan Jackson concert, and there were some ladies in front of us, and they were talking about hunting and fishing, and they were talking about our show and the 4 Outdoorsmen, and I was like, yeah, and my friend, Brian's, and they're like, Zepp? You should have seen the look their husband gave them.
Wow.
Well, that'll happen.
Not very popular.
I don't know.
husbands.
Maybe they were in Vegas one time or something.
True, I saw you went running around. Apparently, we're trying to track down Jared Wicklund.
Well, I tell you what, he's at the State Fair. He was at the State Fair
Oh,
all day
yeah.
in the DNR booth, and I think as soon as he started talking about the rack, he was running around trying to get some sights or something. But we finally got a hold of him. As a matter of fact, this is my fault. I gave Mr. Lukey, our producer, the wrong phone number. And I finally got a hold of him, so we're going to be talking.
We are a well-oiled machine for our listeners
Well,
out there. You're going to
At least
love
it
it.
wasn't my fault this time.
That's all right. We'll call up Jared Wicklund again as the PR director for Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever out of St. Paul, Minnesota.
God, how spoiled are we to have Pheasants Forever here, right here in St. Paul, Minnesota?
Very spoiled. Great organization.
Wow, look at our engineer even has the ringer going for our audience.
I got to tell you something. Is he there?
Yep.
Where the hell you been, young man?
Just waiting here.
I screwed
Congratulations, Jared. We just need your social security number and your credit card, and you've won $1 million from the 4 Outdoorsmen.
That's Boomer. That's Boomer. Go ahead, Zep. Start the show, pal.
Jared Wicklund, PR director for Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever, right here out of St. Paul, Minnesota. Jared, welcome to the 4 Outdoorsmen.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate the invitation and look forward to speaking about the efforts of Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever, preserve the traditions of upland hunting in the Midwest and throughout the United States.
Let's just back up just a little bit about what you were doing today. I understand you were out at the state fair. How's that been going for you?
Good. We actually we've been selling quite a few memberships right now. I think we're about 100 memberships over last year.
Oh, wow,
a lot of passionate people there stopping by the booth, and people, I can tell you, people are excited for the upland season this year, and I think there's a lot of good reason to be.
Well, I'm an old South Dakota kid, and we have a family business back there, so I tend to track that pretty closely, but I've been very interested since I've lived here in Minnesota now for a couple of decades about the pheasant population in Minnesota, and how's the 2015 forecast look?
Right now we're waiting for roadside counts to come out, which is really going to give us kind of a baseline for our upland hunting season in Minnesota. But we had great winter weather. It was a very mild winter. The rains held off this spring pretty early.
Good hatch.
We did have some rain late. But there's a lot of people, a lot of anecdotal stories, chapters that I'm talking to that are reporting a really good hatch. I live just north of the Twin Cities in Forest Lake, Minnesota. I've got 10 acres that abuts a 500-acre wildlife area. And just on Friday, actually before I went down to the fair over the weekend, I bumped a brood of 12 pheasants that flushed and just went a little short ways and sat back down, and that was an encouraging sign for me. So I'm excited for the season, and a lot of other people are as well.
Jared, Boomer here. Thanks again for joining us on our podcast here at the 4 Outdoorsmen. It is our second podcast, so a high five through the phone for you for joining us. But question for you. You talked about we should be excited about pheasant season here in Minnesota, and you talked about the roadside counts that are going to be coming out that give us kind of a gauge how the pheasant population is. Can you share with our listeners and us how a roadside count works, and how really accurate is that?
Good question.
Sure, no problem. Well, most of the states, Minnesota, Iowa, South Dakota, a few others, perform an August roadside survey. So what it is during the August months, usually the best conditions are when it's around 55 to 60 degrees, clear morning, no wind. It forms a thick, heavy dew on the grass and the areas where pheasant broods and pheasant chicks are hanging out. They like to get out of that grass, and they like to come out to the road in order to dry off. So biologists, volunteers work together, and they drive the same routes. It depends on the state, but a lot of them are 30-mile routes that they drive. I think Iowa has more than 100 that they do. Minnesota has just about the same, I think. And they drive around, and they count broods from year to year, and they compare them to a baseline from the previous year to give you an idea of basically pheasant potential, pheasant abundance. So, like I said, Minnesota has not been out yet, but we are seeing some very encouraging numbers. Iowa came out today with their press release, 37% increase over last year, which was 151% in 2014. So great things happening there. They're predicting a 300,000 to 500,000 bird harvest, where only 2 or 3 short years ago, they harvested 113,000 birds. So we've come back out of the cellar there. South Dakota is looking at pre-2011 numbers. They had a 42% increase in the roadside count. So if we look back at the rooster harvest for 2011, they harvested about 1.5 million birds, which is right where Pheasants Forever wants to be in South Dakota. We just established a regional office out that way, and South Dakota is an interest of ours, and we're trying to keep that the pheasant capital of the world and try to sustain a 1.5 million bird harvest.
It's a lot of birds, man.
Amen to that. Where's
makes
that?
a lot of people happy.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of people happy.
Jared, where's that regional office at in South Dakota?
Regional office is in Brookings, South Dakota. It's actually at South Dakota State University. They share an office there on the with Natural Resources Management. And you guys might be familiar with SDSU. They have a wonderful natural resources biology program. A lot of smart minds coming out of there that are giving back in a lot of big ways to wildlife conservation. So we're very happy to be stationed there in Brookings with SDSU.
You talked about South Dakota having that target harvest of about 1.5 million birds, or pre-2011 here on the 4 Outdoorsmen, and that Iowa is going to target maybe 150 to 200,000, if I heard that right. What about Minnesota? What did
300 to 500,000?
Okay,
for Iowa this year.
300 to 500 for Iowa this year. What was Minnesota last year?
Minnesota last year, ballpark, I think they were right around 160,000 bird harvest. So they're on their way back up. They had some dismal years, and a lot of people think that pheasant numbers are just a mysterious equation. They're not. It's good weather plus available habitat or great habitat equals increases in bird numbers. And Minnesota has had some harsh years for the past couple of years, not so much this past winter, but 2-3 years ago, we had a couple winters in a row where some of our areas are seeing 30-plus inches of snow or more. And anytime that happens, it's hard to see a pheasant increase, because the key is to get healthy hens through the year and into the breeding season with a good breeding population. If you don't have hens there to reproduce, obviously roosters do not lay eggs, and it's just one of the ways that we see great production in any given year is to get those healthy hens through the winter.
So with all that said, and we talked about that target harvest of 1.5 million for South Dakota, 300 to 500,000 for Iowa. Last year for Minnesota was about 160-ish thousand. Prior to the show, we were chatting amongst ourselves about why South Dakota is such a mecca for pheasant hunting. Can you share with our listeners why you think South Dakota is just this perfect storm of why it has a target harvest of 1.5 million?
Well, there's a couple different reasons, but the biggest one is available habitat in South Dakota. Obviously, South Dakota is well known for their waterfowl hunting as well. It's basically the target of the prairie, one of the targets, I guess, of the prairie pothole region between Minnesota, Iowa, North Dakota, and in South Dakota. They've got James River Crep, which is a conservation reserve enhancement program. If you guys have hunted out there and see those James River Crep signs, those are open to public hunting. They just come up with a lot of different ways to help produce birds. They have a variety of different crops, from milo to sunflowers, small grains, corn and beans, obviously, as well. And those help contribute to numbers depending on when they're harvested. And they just have a lot of available habitat, and they are investing in their pheasant populations out there. For example, one of the things that's happening right now, I'm not sure if you guys have heard of it, but it's called the Aberdeen Pheasant Coalition. Pheasants Forever is involved with it, and local businesses got together and said, hey, pheasant hunting is what sustains this community. And one of the things that they've done is they are about $80,000 funded out of the $100,000 target that they're trying to reach, and they're using that money to provide an extra incentive for landowners to enroll in conservation programs and open that property up to public hunting. So not only are they putting wildlife habitat on the ground, but they're providing a great resource for public hunting and recreation for all of us that like to chase roosters every fall. So those are just a couple of the different things.
And I want to add to that, Jared. I'm a South Dakota kid. It's a bit of a drier environment out there as well. So you get drier springs with better hatches. It sometimes works against the waterfowl population out there. And another thing, really, because this happened on our Great Plains hunting in Beetle County, is our game fishing parks out there, the equivalent of the DNR here in Minnesota, started a program back in the 90s, I believe, where they started encouraging and helping to pay for farmers to switch out their shelter belts. We all know shelter belts are really key in South Dakota because of the wind out there and the erosion and the way that your buildings can blow in. That's why you see farm buildings out there completely surrounded by shelter belts on four sides because of the wind out there. You can get an inch of snow and it can literally blow a road closed for a week out there. So what they decided to do was from the traditional trees that they did use and the shelter belts that we know, they started switching over to cedar trees and providing those with farmers, which provide a lot better cover for pheasants in the wintertime. It doesn't allow the snow to pile up in there. It's the thicker, denser, more of a shrub kind of tree. You guys know what cedar trees are, certainly. And that has made, I know on our land, all the difference as far as that winter kill goes, giving those birds those cedar strip belts. And my dad put in a lot of them to be able to hold the birds there and, like you said, get the hens through that harsh winter.
It's amazing the survivability that pheasants have. They're a very tenacious bird. But you are absolutely right. Shelter belts in a lot of different forms, grows at trees just surrounding the property, or if it's a planted shelter belt from game fish and parks. Whether it's South Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, a lot of them have tree programs that landowners can enroll in and get cost share to do. And even those shelter belts, I will say it's nice when they're planted the right way and they provide that cover for wildlife, because you can plant a shelter belt the totally wrong way and not provide the cover that they need. But even a well-planted shelter belt with a mix, plum trees, cedar trees, those types of things, evergreens, provides some of the thermal cover that pheasants need, especially when inclement weather comes along. And I'll point back to that they have a lot of winter cover in South Dakota. So when they have an easy winter, they go into the spring. Those hens are healthy, and like you said, it's an arid climate, and that can sometimes play against them as well. If they do not get enough rain to stimulate habitat growth in the spring and stimulate bug production, which is incredibly important for pheasant chicks, it can go the reverse trend as well, and see some decreases from too dry.
Well, Jared, you're talking about all these good things that are happening in South Dakota, and we know we had a great hatch here apparently this spring in Minnesota because of the dry spring. That doesn't mean squat if we don't have the right cover and the right food for the hens in the winter to make it through the next spring. South Dakota's kicking ass. What's Minnesota DNR doing to help with the habitat in Minnesota?
A lot of different things. Number one, I'll point to the Clean Water Land and Legacy Amendment, which you guys might be aware of. I believe it passed back in 2008.
Yep.
And there's money going into that amendment that is used every year. Number one, for land acquisition. So Pheasants Forever, Minnesota DNR and our partners are doing a great job of working together and turning over what used to be private land conservation easements and turning it over to public wildlife areas to create more areas for wildlife. One of the things that just came along here recently is the Habitat Access Program, voluntary public access program that they just announced. 8,000 extra. They announced extra funding for the state of Minnesota that's going to create more than 8,000 acres of public hunting access over the next 3 years, which is great. And then we also have a Minnesota pheasant plan that should be announced sometime in the next couple weeks. We don't have a date on that yet. Could be at the governor's pheasant hunt, but that's going to be laying the road work to help bring back the pheasant population in Minnesota. And it was not that long ago. If you guys remember hunting in 2008 in Minnesota, 2007, 2008, phenomenal bird numbers. I think we harvested about 650,000 roosters between those 2 different years.
Wow.
That wasn't that long ago. And like I said, pheasants are very tenacious, and their survivability, they work hard at it, and when given the right conditions, we can see a comeback of pheasants in this state.
And I think that's
quickly.
Jared Wicklund here, PR director for Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever here in Minnesota. And I think that's been some of the frustration here in Minnesota is it seems to get off the ground and look pretty robust, and then there's a crash. And that it seems to be sort of on that wave curve that you can almost predict it. When it gets well, it's not going to sustain for some reason. And does Pheasants Forever have a bead on why that's happening? And I know you've talked about weather and more programs, land programs for landowners to make habitat better for pheasants, but is there anything else you can point to? I sometimes wonder, there's a lot more. In South Dakota, we have fewer species of animals to hunt. In Minnesota, it seems like you can hunt everything here, and I wonder if competition among the animals and the birds isn't part of it.
Not so much. It's funny you mention that because we had a lot of people come up, not a lot of people, but a few people came up at our booth and said, you know what? Wild turkeys are wiping out our pheasant population. Coyotes are wiping out our pheasant population. I think the best thing that we can do for Pheasants Forever from the education standpoint is to let people know what the actual factors are. So like you pointed out, weather, we already talked about that. Habitat is the big one, though. And when it comes to predators, sure, everybody needs to eat. And turkeys, not really been documented. At least I haven't seen any research. But, might they poke at a pheasant chick when they're 2 inches tall? Maybe.
Yeah.
But turkeys are not out on the landscape trying to eradicate the pheasant population.
I just don't see them competing for the same land, and that one just really didn't make sense to me. And as far as predators go, you're not going to find more coyotes than you're going to find in South Dakota, and we seem to manage a pretty good pheasant population over there as well. Boom, you had a question.
Zepp, you talked about maybe that cyclical nature of, or Stru talked about it with the pheasant population here, but I was talking with some fellow upland hunters about grouse hunting here in the state, Jared, and grouse hunting is a very cyclical population for us in Minnesota. It seems like it swings every 5 to 8 years or 5 to 10 years where we have a peak of grouse hunting is really good here in the state, and then it goes on a decline. Is there any relation to that cyclical pattern of grouse hunting in Minnesota and how that relates to the pheasant hunting?
They're two different beasts. They live in two different landscapes. Pheasants are connected to grass. When we have large winter events, grouse tend to thrive in that. They bury into the snow and the forest. That's a pheasant's worst enemy. If they cannot find access to food, which is on the ground level, they're in a world of hurt. So I guess what I'll tell you is that when we look at the Conservation Reserve Program and conservation programs available to landowners to idle some of their ground, as those numbers tend to decrease, you can watch the pheasant population go with it. So if you look at best fit lines of CRP in Minnesota, we are at the height of CRP in 2007, 2008. We've lost a bunch of acres since then, and there's a best fit line that's trending downward when you look at CRP acres and pheasant populations. Obviously, when we have easy winters and easy springs, the habitat we do have, we can increase numbers, which hopefully that's what we're going to see here. Roadside counts are coming out on September 8th next week, so it'll be interesting to see. But that's why we're continuing to work on land acquisitions. We've got local chapters of Pheasants Forever volunteers that hold an annual fundraiser per year, raise funds, and they use that to work with private landowners to provide cost share for food plots, shelter belts, native grass plantings, and it's those types of things that are making the difference for Minnesota pheasant population. And I'm going to be really interested to see what's coming out in the Minnesota pheasant plan. I think there's going to be a lot of good things in
when
there
is
to
that
help
out?
September 8th.
Okay, September 8th.
Go ahead, Boomer. Go ahead.
Yeah, Jared, you just talked or put your toes in the water on something I was going to ask you about, which was CRP. I remember the last 2 years from a lot of the events I've been a part of through Here's My Gear and other things, that there was a lot of concern with CRP, the decline of CRP. A lot of farmers with the price of soy and corn, they were switching over their land to more ag than CRP. Yep. But it's kind of interesting tonight that you're telling us that it looks like it's on the upswing, even though CRP land is on the downswing. Can you kind of explain that in a little more why that is? I know we talked about the winters and all that good stuff, but I'd be really interested to get your take on that.
It really, weather and habitat are those two main factors. So even though habitat has decreased in the form of Conservation Reserve Program, between land acquisitions and easements and other things out there, we're still adding habitat on the landscape. So short-term pheasant populations can benefit greatly, even though CRP acres continue to trend downward.
Yep.
But along with that, we're also seeing a great increase. I was in a meeting last week at Pheasants Forever, and they said more so than any other time in the last 6 to 10 years, we are seeing a ton of interest right now in CRP. And why is that? It's because crop prices have gone back down.
Yeah.
I haven't looked this week to see exactly where they're at, but the continuous reserve program is paying farmers. I know in Minnesota, I've talked to landowners out there, farmers who are getting mid 200s to mid 300s for CRP payments. Some of the different programs add in an incentive on top of that, like $100 per acre. At that point, you're beating cash rent, and you're taking your unproductive acres, putting them in a conservation program, getting paid to do it.
It's a good deal.
Creating wildlife habitat and clean water, and it's great for everybody. It's good for the farmer, and it's good for wildlife here in Minnesota. So short-term pheasant populations can increase dramatically given good weather. Long-term pheasant populations, it all comes back to habitat. And that's why Pheasants Forever and Quill Forever is known as a habitat organization. We continue working on those types of things
So, Jared,
to make a difference
so
in the long term.
we talked about habitat, but why we have you on here at the Four Outdoorsmen on our podcast here, I want to talk to you about a subject that can raise the hairs on a lot of people's neck when you talk about pheasant hunting and trapping. So I know a lot of different resort owners and a lot of people that go out to public land, and there seems to be a really large debate. We've had someone on the show before, on our prior show, about trapping, and even though if you are
Pheasants
hunting,
are so hard to trap.
yeah, but if you are hunting on private land, people can still put a trap in the ditchway because it's a common area, right? And there's been some injuries to dogs with some of those traps, and it seems like that is a point of contention between pheasant hunters or upland hunters and trappers. I guess I'd be curious on what the Pheasant Forever position is on that trapping in public ditchway or private ditchways.
Well, I think it even goes a little bit further than that. You guys might remember early in the legislative session, really early this spring, trapping legislation continues to be introduced every year around body gripping traps and having to put those at least 5 feet off the ground. Are you guys familiar with that?
A little bit. A little bit.
Not about the debate. I'm not. I am with the practice.
Yep. So Pheasants Forever. So let me point out, first of all, that every single person, especially in my department, in our office, we bring our dogs to work every single day. A lot of people think, well, he's just a public relations specialist talking on behalf of Pheasants Forever. I'm a pheasant hunter. I'm a grouse hunter. I'm a deer hunter. I hunt everything that moves. And the most memorable times I have in the field are with my dog.
Yep.
So that's one of the things that I
bird
care
hunting.
really deeply
Bird hunting, your dog and your shotgun and you all form a triumvirate there. I just don't, I can't imagine. And I used to, when I was a kid, tromp off through the trees and go try and kick a bird up here or there. But your dog is, that's as much as you, that's your hunting buddy.
Yep. So it's an emotionally charged subject because there's a lot of us in the office that we hunt grouse. We hunt in areas where body grip traps, we could be forced with the decision one day to be giving our dogs CPR out in the field.
Yeah, wow.
But it's one of those things where we sat down and said, where does Pheasants Forever stand on the legislation? Is it our job to come out and support it? Yes, we do have a lot of dog owners, all of us in the office and a lot of our different members that hunt multiple different species. But when it comes down to it, Pheasants Forever is the habitat organization, and especially this legislative session, when we were brought up with the buffers legislation, which you guys probably heard a lot about.
Yep.
Implementing buffers on public ditches in Minnesota. We decided to take the line. We said, you know what? We're the habitat organization. We're going to focus on issues that revolve around habitat, and we're going to let some of those other groups. Because when we tend to stray away,
what a politician you are, man!
you
You're
walk
a
the line,
politician,
Jared,
ass
come on.
kisser. Yeah.
You call a PR director.
when we stray away from our mission,
Yeah.
it opens us up. It opens us up to a lot of different things. And one of the things in that trapping bill was there was an ordinance in there that you'd have to get written permission to hunt on private land. And that wasn't a path we wanted to go down either, because that if that were to go through, that could lead to a lot of different things in other legislative sessions. So, I got a call the other day on wind energy and what is our stance on windmills killing killing all sorts of different critters, mostly birds. Well, we're not concerned with that. We're the habitat organization. We know that if we continue to put great habitat out in the landscape, we're going to increase the bird population and help replace some of those that are lost. So,
Yeah.
Hey, Jared, hang on a
our
second.
focus
Zep's got something to say,
remains
right?
habitat.
No, we're just kind of wrapping that up. Jared, we only have a few minutes left, and I wanted to give you just maybe 30 seconds here before we split because we could do several shows with you. I could talk upland bird hunting, and you're getting into some things like windmills and trapping that I could do a whole different show on. So let's not go down that because I just want to touch base real quick on Quail Forever, which we haven't spent any time on. And I keep thinking Quail Forever is new, but you guys have Quail Forever has been attached with Pheasants Forever as part of the organization for
10 years.
10 years?
10 years.
Okay.
Correct.
And quail's hunting is something I've done as a novelty here and there. When I've gone with somebody that's a quail hunter, it's something I loved, but it's not something I've pursued, if that makes sense. Talk just briefly about Quail Forever here in Minnesota and the Midwest.
So Quail Forever, I believe we've got 3 chapters of Quail Forever here in Minnesota. We've got 2 in the Twin Cities, and we've got 1 in southeast Minnesota. But Quail Forever has grown by leaps and bounds. We've got over 150 chapters in 27 states now. We're only 10 years old. We just passed our 10th anniversary, and we're actually going to be celebrating quail this year. I'm actually down in Kansas City right now at National Pheasant Fest and Quail Classic. I'm getting ready for it. It occurs in February this year, and quail is going to be a big part of it. Just like pheasants, when pheasants have good weather events, quail also rebound. You look at states like Iowa today, they said they released their roadside counts, and quail's included in that as well. And they're looking at the best quail hunting season in 21 years.
Wow.
So those birds can make a comeback. But Quail Forever is we're dedicated to the conservation of quail and other wildlife through habitat improvement, public awareness, and education. It's the same model. Local chapters throughout the U.S. Hold fundraisers and work to establish quail and work on wildlife habitat projects. And if you're a quail hunter, pheasant hunter, veteran, or just getting into it this year, whatever it might be, this is a great year to get out and bird hunt. You look at Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri. We're looking at some pretty large increases for quail.
Cool.
In those Midwestern states for pheasants as well. So it's just going to be a great year.
All right. Well, hey, thanks. And we've got to obviously have you back on before the big 2016 show that you guys got coming up down in Kansas City, Missouri. And we'll talk to you as we get into the season here. Maybe we'll have a chance to talk to you again a little bit before the 15th opener. Jared Wicklund, the PR specialist for Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever. Sorry, I was thinking about something I've got to do next. But Jared, thank you. That's a great interview, and I love the work that you guys do. Keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for sharing the conservation message.
Take care, young man.
Happy hunting out there.
You too. Have a good day.
All right, thanks. Jared Wicklund. Yeah. I don't know. It's like I had a brain fart there for a second. Does that make sense to anybody in this room?
That's
When
better
I-
than the fart that
When I
Boomer
say
just
brain
had.
fart,
Yeah,
Good Lord.
Oh, everything's alive and social tonight.
I
Boomer.
thought somebody was gutting a deer back there.
That was Boomer,
This
man.
is probably
Get
not the best
gangrene
time to
coming
bring
out
up
of
Foodie Friday for those people, because I've lost my appetite. But BT, Brian Turner, has been a radio guy in this market and a communicator. He probably would hate to hear this, but for decades. And this is really cool. We talked about the father and son, apples to apples on
Yes,
Live
we
and
did.
Social.
Yeah.
BT and his lovely daughter, Lydia Turner, demystify the word foodie for the sake of good food and drink in the Twin Cities. Foodie Friday is the name of the podcast. You can find it right here on Live and Social. Each week, heavy hitters of the service industry open up and they discuss vast and diverse food, all that good, tasty food that we're thinking about right now. So check it out. Foodie Friday. Good grief. Somebody had something
You know what?
delicious to eat.
That sounds like a show that I would love to listen to. I'm gonna find that.
I'm serious.
I'm gonna find that.
I'm on Live and Social. While we're going here, let me just mention one more of the breakdown. Brandon Warren and Cole DeVries break down the Twins games from the insights. You've got your former Major League player there.
Yeah.
So they break down the ball game, give you the inside scoop and all the Twins stuff. Again, that's at aliveandsocial.com, and the list goes on. You've got the 4 Outdoorsmen, a little something for everybody.
Do we have a chance to choose our own engineer when we do this show? Because the last week we had the engineer. We had the Twins game on right here.
Yeah.
This young man,
But
when
he's
you
got
push
a
the
Twins
damn
hat
button,
on.
Yeah. We were watching the ball game, not tonight.
He's more professional.
Oh, I suppose he is.
Right, keeping us focused. Aaron, right? And we had Grant
job,
last week.
man.
Absolutely. We're just happy somebody's in here pushing the
Hey,
buttons.
do we have
It's
to
not
wrap
me.
this up? I'm going to ask you a question.
I think we've got a few minutes. When did we start this thing? I forgot to look at the clock.
7:45.
All right.
Shoot.
Yeah, so we're at
Someone's got to
8:45.
know. Someone's got to know how much money leaves Minnesota to go to South Dakota for pheasant hunting.
I think it's in the hundreds of dollars.
Oh, it's got to be all of that.
For me personally, now
Double.
I've got to pay $125 for flipping a license over there now.
Is that it's a 10-day license still,
yeah,
right?
and you
Two
break it down
5-day
2
periods.
5-day periods.
There's
That's right.
millions of dollars going over that way.
And when
right?
you go over there and do that, by the way, you don't know if you don't know when you're going to be back for your second 5-day hunt, just put the last week of the year, because the hunting season goes through December 31st. Just put that last 5 days in December, because if you decide to go back before that,
Yeah.
you can move that 5-day period up and hunt it before that. But say you can't get out there for your second 5-day period and
Yeah.
you get there after that, you have to write that on your license there. So now you get back after that second 5-day period and it's already been written on your license. That license is no good.
You know, Zepp, why we're talking about South Dakota.
It's got to be, for Minnesota, because
Huge.
a lot of our out-of-state
Huge.
hunters, and I'll be honest with you, in Beetle County, I know a lot of out-of-state or a lot of pheasant hunting operations in South Dakota, don't get most of them from Minnesota. In fact, Dad won't even really advertise Minnesota because that's not where we get most of our pheasant hunters. I don't know how other areas do. You mentioned Brown County.
Yeah.
But most of them come from the South, Texas and the Southeast. Kentucky, Tennessee, Florida, Georgia, Texas, Alabama, Oklahoma. All those guys coming up to hunt, and gals now. A lot more women coming up to hunt up in South Dakota, but not as many from Minnesota. And I think that's because Minnesota's in the Midwest. You've got some pheasant, but then you've got grouse and turkey and,
Yeah.
of course,
Yeah.
the waterfowl.
You know, and look where Pheasant Fest it's in Kansas City, Missouri this year. You
Yeah.
know, the one little bicker I have about hunting in South Dakota is for waterfowl, it's still a lottery out there, Zepp. If I want to be an out-of-state guy or girl and I want to go hunt in South Dakota, because there's great waterfowl hunting out there.
There is
you still
great,
gotta do a lottery.
but it's in smaller areas, and
Right.
it's sort of coveted by South Dakotans because if we have a good waterfowl hatch, Jared talked about if we have a wet spring out there, or if we've got a lot of rain like we've had this past year, and we've got a lot of bottomlands that are flooded out, we kind of want to hunt those ourselves. So they do restrict that, and they keep that as a lottery. You're right; you can't just blaze over there.
Fun.
All right.
Wow, good
Fun
stuff.
show, yeah,
Another
fun
fun
show.
day with the 4 Outdoorsmen.
All right, listen, fellas, that's it. We're the 4 Outdoorsmen podcast. We're going to wrap it up right there.
And it can be heard on aliveandsocial.com anytime, right? Starting
Yeah,
tomorrow.
and I
probably.
think we're going to be ticking with iTunes here pretty
Yep,
quick, aren't we,
very
buddy?
soon. And you'll
we're going
be
to
on
have a
the show
website
tomorrow.
coming up.
Oh,
yeah,
can I
tomorrow
talk
morning.
about
Oh, yeah,
that?
yeah. Let's hear it.
All right, the Twin Cities Hit Show. I'm going to be on tomorrow morning at 9:30 with Rusty Gatenby and his crew of characters. Tomorrow morning, 9:30, TwinCitiesHitShow.com, on AliveAndSocial.com as well.
All right.
I'll be on
All
tomorrow
right.
at 9:30. Just talking about us, guys. I'll try and represent you properly.
Tight lines to all
I've
our
got-
listeners out there.
That was... Yeah, what? Is that it? Yeah.